You are listening to Big Family Radio. Big Family Radio. Obiase Eye.
You are welcome back, and sorry for the technical hitches. So, the Okaikwe Central Member of Parliament, Honorable Patrick Brahma, has intensified calls for the Minister of Energy to appear before the legislative body. The MP's urgent request stems from escalating public concern and confusion surrounding the issue of missing containers belonging to the Electricity Company of Ghana, ECG. Boame's demand for accountability follows a series of conflicting reports and shifting figures regarding the number of containers initially reported missing. Notably, recent claims suggest that a staggering 2,637 containers have now been retrieved. This figure represents more than double the number that was initially declared missing, raising significant questions about the accuracy of previous reports and the overall management of ECG's assets. The MP seeks a comprehensive explanation from the Energy Minister to clarify these discrepancies and reassure the public.
And 300 and something. Now GPHA is telling us that they've recovered about 2,600 containers. We also heard of about 3,000 containers. That's why we are going to ask the minister to come and give us the true position of what happened, what has been recovered, whether they were missing or misplaced. You are interested in the fact that whether they were misplaced, how can containers also be misplaced? Yes, it happens at the port. It's not the first time. If you are a public officer, don't be quick to call a news conference. Because what I've seen is that people want to vilify their opponents, but it will end up being that, oh, what I told the media earlier on was not a true position. At that time, you would have destroyed the person to the public. That's why I'm asking that people or public officials should not be too quick to call news conferences and speak about issues about, oh, this person has stolen this, this person has done this container is missing, we've uncovered this rot. Because it's all about evidence. When you are called to defend what you said at a court of competent jurisdiction, you will be asked to provide the requisite evidence.
Before we move to the international news, News at 6 is sponsored by Dim Herbal, Williams Pub, Ahunto AA Construction Works, Center for Trade, Trustees Network Group, Big Family Multimedia Institute, and BFM Store. You can also watch us live and follow us on Facebook at Big Family Radio. Follow us on Instagram too at Big Family Radio, YouTube and TikTok at Big Family Radio and Big Family TV. Moving on to the international news. Saul Takahashi, a prominent human rights lawyer, has offered an in-depth analysis of the European Union's recent change in tone regarding Israel's ongoing and devastating military campaign in Gaza. He highlights the EU's increasingly critical rhetoric towards the actions taken by Israel, which many have described as amounting to a genocidal war. However, Takahashi raises important questions about whether these strong condemnations will be accompanied by concrete policies and actions, or if they will remain mere words without substantial impact. His insights call attention to the gap that often exists between diplomatic statements and real-world accountability in international relations.
It's definitely a positive thing that there are more harsh words being spoken now, and that'll increase the pressure. But we really have to see whether these European governments are going to put their money where their mouths are. One of the very significant things that's been going on since the genocide has started is last year in September, the UN General Assembly adopted a resolution essentially ordering the Israelis to terminate the occupation within a year's time, to evacuate the colonies, and to provide reparations. So, and that year's time, that is going to come up this coming September. So that's really going to be a big point here, that we're going to see if the Europeans are really going to take action, along with, the mass number of the rest of the world, as well as their own populations, and whether they really are going to do the necessary to isolate Israel on the international stage and end impunity for these violations.
Stefan Wolf, a distinguished professor at the University of Birmingham with a specialization in security studies, provides an in-depth analysis of the diverse and interconnected challenges that Germany is likely to encounter in the domains of national and regional security. In his examination, Wolf explores the intricate dynamics of the contemporary geopolitical landscape, which is characterized by a series of shifting alliances and the emergence of new multifaceted threats that challenge traditional security paradigms. He notes that the changing nature of conflict, particularly in Europe, calls for a critical assessment of existing security frameworks. Factors such as the resurgence of aggressive state actors, the complexities of hybrid warfare, and the implications of global terrorism are all contributing to a more unpredictable security environment. Wolf highlights how these developments necessitate a thorough re-evaluation of Germany's security policies and strategies, urging policymakers to adapt to the evolving threats that could impact not only Germany, but also the broader European community. Moreover, Wolf underscores the importance of adopting proactive measures to enhance national resilience, advocating for a comprehensive approach that includes strengthening military capabilities, enhancing intelligence sharing among allies, and fostering diplomatic efforts to mitigate potential conflicts.
What we have seen in Germany, but also more widely across Europe, is a recognition that the continent now faces a dual threat. One of those threats, of course, is what Russia is doing at the moment against Ukraine, but also has indicated that there would be potential for more confrontation directly with NATO. And whilst Europe is dealing with the threat from Russia, it also has to face the possibility of being abandoned by the United States if Donald Trump decides that he wants to walk away from NATO, or that he does no longer want to extend Article 5 guarantees to European NATO members. It's this recognition that has led Germany and Europe now to much more significant investment in both defense capabilities, but also in manpower. It's very clear now that Germany has mobilized the right financial tools to invest more in advanced military capabilities, producing and purchasing more ammunitions, but also is now moving much more towards the idea of potentially reintroducing conscription, simply because there are not enough volunteers to actually ultimately.
Tariq Kenny Shawa has drawn attention to a concerning trend in which the U.S. government is increasingly applying a federal law originally designed to target organized crime syndicates as a tool to criminalize pro-Palestinian activism. He explains that this legal framework, which was not intended to address political dissent or activism, is now being repurposed to suppress and intimidate individuals and groups advocating for Palestinian rights. Kenny Shawa warns that such measures risk undermining fundamental freedoms of speech and assembly, raising serious questions about the balance between national security and civil liberties in the current political climate.
I mean, RICO is gives prosecutors the opportunity to go after not just individuals, but like a criminal network, right? How would that apply in this case?
All it takes really is accusing one or two organizations of providing material support to terrorism. And that creates kind of a domino effect, because then other organizations won't be able to interact with these organizations over their own, reputational concerns and legal concerns. What this is really trying to do, in other words, is effectively kind of like poison the pro-Palestine movement.
And it bears mentioning that RICO, the government used RICO in order to shut down the mafia. So the fact that they're even approaching it with this sort of mindset that protesters, Palestinian protesters, are sort of mafia that needs to be stamped.
Still on the international news, Robert Patman, a distinguished professor of international relations at the University of Otago, has offered a thorough and nuanced examination of the U.S.-supported humanitarian foundation operating within the Gaza Strip. In his analysis, Patman addresses the multifaceted challenges and controversies that have enveloped the organization, which is tasked with delivering critical aid in one of the world's most volatile and politically charged regions. He places particular emphasis on the circumstances surrounding the unexpected resignation of Jack Wood, the foundation's director, whose departure has raised questions within humanitarian and political circles. Patman investigates a range of factors that may have contributed to Wood's decision to step down, including internal organizational conflicts, pressures from political stakeholders, and the ethical dilemmas inherent in operating under intense scrutiny from multiple factions.
Jake Wood has a background in humanitarian assistance, but dealing with natural disasters. And I think he cumulatively realized that he wasn't getting support from the organizations that he needed in order to make this US-Israeli initiative an effective, independent humanitarian organization. It's no secret that major aid donors had not been convinced by this proposal, which is essentially a startup. And secondly, the UN, and particularly UNRWA, have been very cool in response and have indicated they won't cooperate. And the crucial thing here is, I think this initiative lacks international legitimacy in the eyes of some of the key stakeholders. And that what is also striking and has caused problems is that Jake Wood's resignation, he said that he didn't believe the organisation was adhering to humanitarian principles, which he would not turn his back on. There is a perception internationally this is an attempt to weaponize the distribution of humanitarian aid.
Claude Kabemba, CEO of Southern Africa Resource Watch, has provided an in-depth analysis of the underlying factors contributing to the frequent mining tragedies across Africa. In the wake of the recent rescue of 260 miners trapped in South Africa, Kabemba highlights systematic issues such as inadequate safety regulations, poor enforcement, and exploitative labor practices that continue to endanger workers in the mining sector. He also examines how the surging global demand for Africa's vast mineral resources, driven by technological advancements and industrial growth worldwide, exerts additional pressure on mining operations, often at the expense of worker safety and environmental sustainability. Kabemba's insights underscore the urgent need for comprehensive reforms to address these challenges and ensure that the extraction of critical minerals benefits both local communities and the broader global economy in a responsible and ethical manner.
There is no dispute that the Africa mining industry has immense potential due to the continent's vast reserves of minerals. But Africa mining industry faces complex and interlinked challenges. And for me, the first challenge and most important one is the nature of the state in Africa. most of African states are quite dysfunctional. Even those who are functional, their institutions are not well built to manage the complexity of the mining industry. And that is reflected where countries are unable to manage the increasing, evolving artisanal mining, where we are seeing a lot of human rights violations and people who are working in very unsafe conditions, and most states have been unable to manage that. But secondly is the problem of the integration of the mining sector in the world economy. I think we still remain in the colonial model where Africa extracts raw material that is export outside and in return get a bit of tax. That tax is not enough to build economies.
In the bustling city centre of Liverpool, located in northwest England, a car unexpectedly ploughed into a large crowd of pedestrians who had gathered to celebrate Liverpool Football Club's triumphant win of the English Premier League title. The incident resulted in injuries to at least 27 individuals, including 4 children, all of whom were swiftly transported to a nearby hospital for medical treatment. Among the hospitalized victims, authorities have identified that 1 adult and 1 child are in serious condition, requiring urgent and intensive care.
At least 27 people this morning hospitalized, including 4 children, after a minivan crashed through a group of pedestrians at a soccer parade. At least 1 adult and 1 child suffered very serious injuries. At the time, thousands of people had lined the streets to celebrate Liverpool's Premier League title win. Video shows the minivan traveling at a high speed and plowing through the crowd before it came to a stop. The driver was arrested at the scene. He's described as a 53-year-old British man. Authorities say the crash is not being investigated as terrorism related, and no one else is being sought in connection with what police are calling an isolated incident. Let's bring in NBC News foreign correspondent Raf Sanchez live from the scene of the incident in Liverpool. Raf, what's the latest there?
Well, Willie, as you can see, a major police investigation is now underway, trying to understand how this joyful championship parade turned really into a scene of horror. I just want to explain the geography here. We are at the bottom of Water Street. This is one of the main drags in central Liverpool. And less than 24 hours ago, you had tens of thousands of soccer fans on both sides of the street. They were cheering some of the sport's biggest stars, fresh off their championship win in the English Premier League, coming down. And then that dark minivan came careening into the crowd. So just to explain, that minivan is still parked on the street. It is on the other side of that large police vehicle, which is obscuring the view. And detectives are continuing to carry out forensic.
To end the international news, the Palestinian population is currently facing an extremely severe and life-threatening situation, with their health and safety at significant risk. Aid workers operating in Gaza have expressed urgent and profound concerns during an interview with AJ Stats, emphasizing the rapidly deteriorating conditions on the ground. They highlighted the critical need for immediate international assistance and intervention to prevent a looming humanitarian crisis.
The scale of starvation on the ground is immense.
Well, what I'm seeing on the streets is the desperation of the people, especially mothers who come up to me desperate for food and they're just watching their children starve.
Claire and May both work for medical charities in Gaza. They've told us how things have become absolutely desperate after Israel's 11-week blockade on food and aid and its renewed military assault, which started in mid-May. Hundreds of people have been killed and tens of thousands are being forced to move over and over again.
They're on the streets with nowhere to go. They don't have food, and once they're out in the open, they're still not safe.
Israel has started to allow some aid trucks in, but it's nowhere near enough. The UN has called it token assistance.
One of the hardest things for me personally is seeing the cancer patients we used to support are now entirely abandoned.
Southern Gaza's European hospital was targeted with a series of strikes.
The European Gaza hospital, which provided the only chemotherapy services for cancer patients in Gaza, is now taken entirely out of service. Now cancer patients are left without any treatment, and we simply have no answer.
Now, Israel has accused Hamas of stealing or diverting aid, which the group denies, and it's set up an alternative aid group together with the US called the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation to distribute rations, hygiene kits, and medical supplies. Have you seen any evidence of Hamas diverting aid supplies that come into Gaza?
No evidence of this. And what I have seen is that our supplies are very carefully controlled at the border by the Israeli authorities, and they come to us also on trucks that are very well controlled. They reach our warehouses and hospitals, and then I see this aid going to the people. So at no point along the way is it not reaching people that need it.
The whole idea behind the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation is pretty controversial. The man who was supposed to run it has already quit, saying it's not possible to perform his job while strictly adhering to the humanitarian principles of humanity, neutrality, impartiality, and independence. The UN, along with other aid agencies, say they won't work with it.
There's not a need for a new humanitarian organisation per se in the eyes of the UN and aid organisations. What's needed is to end the blockade of food.
The Palestinian people, they're facing a death sentence.
Moving away from the international news, now on the entertainment news. Ghanaian singer Jackie, born Jacqueline Echampon, recently shared her updated approach to navigating social media feedback regarding her music and personal brand. In an interview with Kwame Dazi, she explained that while she values feedback, she's become more selective about the advice she internalizes. Jackie noted that taking every piece of advice from critics can be confusing, which is why she ultimately trusts her own judgment. She said she just wants to learn to appreciate what she feels is right, because one person will say this and the other person is also going to say that he or she doesn't like her hair. Okay. Moving on to the other news. Now to end the news, Ghanaian dancehall star Episode delivered an electrifying performance at this year's Shindig Music Festival, held at Charlton Park in Wiltshire, United Kingdom. He shared the stage with fellow Ghanaian artist KOG, a versatile creative, rapper, percussionist, and art director, often described as a more intimate version of Glastonbury. The Shindig Festival also featured a lineup of renowned acts. According to a BBC report, this included celebrated Nigerian musician and band leader Seun Kuti and Egypt 80, Ibibio Sound Machine, TC and the Groove Family. The Leroy Thornhill, a former member of the Prodigy. Episode is currently in the UK and is scheduled to perform in Germany in June as part of his European tour. To end the news, the recap of the top stories. Honorable Bagman has cautioned MPs on privilege abuse and has stressed accountability. Amidst the Sakumono Ramsar site demolition, a prayer ministry leader has spoken, saying that God's will should be done. Honorable Patrick Brahma has demanded for answers on missing ECG containers as retrieved number doubles. In the international news, human rights lawyer Saul Takahashi has questioned whether EU's tough rhetoric on Israel's Gaza war would lead to concrete actions. Claude Kabemba has thrown emphasis on the root causes of Africa's mining tragedies amid rising global demand following South Africa miner rescue. In the entertainment news, singer Jackie has said that she no longer wants to read social media comments. News at 6 was brought to you by Ahonto AA Construction Works, Center for Trade, Trustees Network Group, Big Family Multimedia Institute, BFM Store, Dim Herbal, Williams Pub, and Nahoto AA Construction and Works. You can watch us live on Facebook at Big Family Radio and Instagram at Big Family Radio, and also TikTok and YouTube at Big Family Radio and Big Family TV. You can as well download our radio app on the App Store and Play Store. My name is Esther Akosi-Agbobli. A massive thank you to my producers. Thank you for joining News at 6 from the studios of Big Family Radio. Have a good evening.